I'm given 30 seconds to tell you about HubSpot. I know there's a couple of HubSpot customers in the room, and this might sound like a plant, but I just met our customer of the year, Craig, who's here, like total accident. And Craig, I'm going to take a page out of the Salesforce playbook. We love Salesforce. We follow Salesforce. Salesforce invested in us. We try to do everything that Salesforce does. And one thing that they do awesome is they bring their prospects and their customers and their partners together and get them all talking. So Craig, can you give the elevator pitch? Like, where's Craig? Are you back here? Hey Craig, customer of the year for HubSpot. What do you, HubSpot in your words? Tell us.
I haven't got my check yet, so. We generate all of our leads. Thanks to HubSpot, we've grown significantly in the past couple of years since we started using it. Great. We know exactly what coming to us, where it's coming from. We have all that data, and our process is automated. All we need to do is generate great content, and you guys help us do that.
Cool. Thank you, Craig. So it's an all-in-one marketing platform: SEO, social, blogging, lead nurturing, email marketing, CMS, analytics, and lead analytics all in one package. I'm really excited to be up here speaking about lead generation. Most of the questions are going to be generated around that. The one tip that I have for the room, especially for the folks that are newer, startups are my drug, so send me a note at any time. I love talking about getting these things started. Is to check out websitegrader.com. Has anyone run their website grader score or report? What was your score, sir? 47? 46. Okay, so he's better than the 46% of the 3 million people that run their website grader. It's a free app. It's Website Grader. You put your website in, you get a 5-page report. It tells you everything on how to fix your website, get it found, generate more leads, etc. 96, nice, Craig. Thanks for bragging. Good job. All right, guys. So we got 45 minutes to do 8 questions. Daniel's been all over me to keep it to 5 minutes per question. I'm going to turn over to the panel. Panel will start with Daniel and let him introduce himself.
Sure. So before I go, I just want to actually say, Toronto needs more events like this. I just want to call out Dan Klass for organizing this. It's amazing. Thank you very much for doing that. Very specific, very tactical, how to sell, and for startups, it's awesome. Thank you. You can take my beer. So I'm Daniel DeBow. I'm one of the founders and co-CEO of a company called Rypple. Rypple is a social performance management application. What does that mean? We make performance management not suck. Basically, it's a terrible, painful process right now that most companies do, and we figured out a way to make it fast, easy, and social. So focused on 3 behaviors that help and are demonstrable in improving company performance, helping managers coach people to achieve company goals and personal goals, recognizing people in real time, and finally making sure that feedback is fast and frequent inside your company. So we've got great customers, hopefully HubSpot, I think, soon. But our biggest customer is actually Facebook, so that's how they manage all the talent inside the company using our software. Companies like Guilt Group and companies in Toronto like NextJ or Kobo or Dayforce. That's Rypple. And it is also a freemium app, so you can go to rypple.com, R-Y-P-P-L-E, and sign up today. Nice trick, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mike McDermott. I'm the co-founder and CEO of proudly Torontonian FreshBooks. We are an online invoicing and bookkeeping application for people who get paid for their time and expertise. So some of you in the room may be entrepreneurs, you may go into business because you do something you love, only to discover there is all this pain and agony around getting paid and managing your books. Since we started in 2003, we've helped over 3.5 million people send and receive print and pay invoices and discover a wonderful world of getting paid painlessly. We helped folks collect over $4 billion last year, on track to do sort of north of 6 this year. Spent 3.5 years in my parents' basement. We're 85 people now here in Toronto, and it's still growing fast.
Thanks, Mike.
Joel, you're up. Hi, I'm Joel Lessem, CEO of Firmex. Just wanted to test, how many people here heard of Firmex? About 10%. So quickly, we're a 4.5-year-old startup here in Canada. We are 40 staff, cash flow positive. 85% of our business is outside of Canada, so that's probably why we only have 15% of people that live around here. We provide an online platform for organizations to share large volumes of highly confidential documents for mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, and compliance. And we're closing in 1,000 customers right now. And we are going, this year will be slow, only running about 60% this year.
Slow. My name is Mark Jane. I'm President and CEO of Intelex Technologies. I'm going to take a page out of it. How many people have heard of Intelex Technologies here? Less than 10. You got better PR than I do. Company, we develop web-based systems for environmental safety and quality management. As Howard Gwynn would say, we're in the plumbing business. We help companies reduce their environmental impact, improve the safety of their employees, and improve the quality of their product. We have over 600 customers, over 500,000 users. Customers range from 3M, Virgin Airlines, Heinz, General Mills, some of the largest companies in the world use our software. We're about 140 employees. This year will be about 55% growth. We've been 45% growth for the last 10 years or so, Fast 50 company the last 3 years. And that's about it.
Great. Great, thanks, Mark. All right, first question, do I get it, Daniel? All right, great. It's going to start with Daniel Rypple. Let's get right to the heart of it. Lead generation. Everybody always needs more leads. How does Rypple generate leads? What are the best channels? How do you guys think about measurement? What are the key measurements about it? Cost of acquisition, conversion, how do you qualify them, etc. Spend a couple minutes on that. Thanks, Daniel.
Sure. So I said nice things about Dan before, now I can make fun a little bit of him. Like, usually you go to these tech conferences and they're like, yeah, just get up on stage and talk and stuff. And he is so anal and organized. And we have like preset questions, so we know what to talk about. So, and I'll say nice things about you. I mean, this is a total setup, but literally, if you want to understand what we have learned how to do, go read a book called Inbound Marketing, which is written by the founders of HubSpot, Dharmesh Shah and Brian Halligan, two great guys. And it is the Bible for how we attract leads. And I'll tell you, I was part of helping to build, I ran marketing at a company called WorkBrain, classic outbound enterprise software. We spent a lot of money going to trade shows, we spent a lot of money buying email lists, and frankly, bothering people a lot. And we don't do that at Rypple. The primary method that we use to generate leads is to create remarkable content. So what does that mean? It means we spend a lot of time trying to get our story into the mainstream press, so just traditional PR. And the way that we get legitimacy to do that is by writing things that people find helpful. So you heard our story, it's about performance, about feedback, coaching, goal setting. We write content and we place content that talks about that. And it's an endless supply of information. We post on our blog. Our blog is not just ours, but it's not just about us, but we invite all sorts of guest speakers and guest writers to come in. We also host pretty much bi-weekly web seminars. And the difference between the types of web seminars we do now and the times we used to do is that we don't talk about Rypple in our web seminars. We talk about how to be a great coach. We just did something with a guy named Michael Locke, who's like one of the gurus of managing developers, software engineers, and he talked about the value and how to do coaching and one-on-one mentoring. And you know, what's amazing to me is how often people come up and say, you know, we were thinking about not buying Rypple, or we didn't really know what it was, but you kept on sending us this stuff that was so helpful. And just like the book tells you, that happens 6 months or a year later. It doesn't happen right away. So our main model for generating leads is to create remarkable content. And then in terms of tracking it, we probably could be better. We do use HubSpot. We actually use a company we bought called Performable to track a lot of the effectiveness of our first-time user experience. But our main and most important metric is just a high-level metric called CAC to LTV. So customer acquisition cost to lifetime customer value. And the way we figure it out is pretty simple. Every month we figure out all of our sales and marketing costs. We add them all up, and then we divide it by the number of customers that we acquire. And that helps us figure out how much does it cost us to acquire each customer. And then we look at how much each customer is generating in annual revenue, and we figure out what do we think the lifetime value of that customer is going to be, and we look at the ratio of those two together. In addition to their stuff, I highly recommend a blog called On Entrepreneurs by one of your investors, a guy named David Skock. He writes great stuff about this.
For entrepreneurs.
For entrepreneurs, yeah, for entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Yeah, we actually do LTV to COCA as well. COCA, so it's the lifetime value of a customer divided by acquisition. Most public SaaS companies have like a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio, if that's a metric for you. As well as the payback period is another big one that people are looking at. So if you add up all your sales and marketing costs, how long does it take for you to add up those monthly fees and pay back that cost? Under 12 months is very good. So a couple metrics that Daniel was throwing out there that I think are hot in SaaS. Okay, let's go to Joel at Firmex now.
If you want all those equations, go to Joel York's blog and plug them in. Ours is currently about 2/3 of the year. We started, it's interesting, we had an evolution. When we started the business, I came out of a traditional sales background, so I picked up the phone a lot. And we went and did what your old company did, Daniel. We went and bothered a lot of people. And we were actually very successful at it. We signed up, hundreds of customers. But only in investment banking. When we started to try to go after other industries, it didn't work so well. So it depends. Right? And so what we're finding now to kind of push beyond investment banking is that we are now doing some of those other things we call some educational content online. We generate a ton of leads through search. So optimize your website. That accounted for, in last year, that accounted for 35% of our new business. But we're very fortunate that we have a viral program. In other words, for every host user, the person who licenses our product, they use it as a collaboration platform with other users, and our referral leads are off the charts, which have a great cost of acquisition. So, and if you kind of look at, as Firmex evolves over time, it says, one referral, and it's close, 70% closing. So we're lucky. But I would suggest anyone, when it comes to how do I generate leads, that's a perennial question, or a monthly question I get every time I meet with my CEO group, software companies, is you got to try everything you can. Different things work for different industries, work for different companies.
That's great, Joe. I totally agree with that. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, so we both forgot one of the most important things, which is just pure word of mouth. And that's actually the vast majority of our leads come from, and I think it sometimes gets overlooked. Like, and Mike is actually, I went for a long walk with him before we even started Rypple, and he kind of beat me up about this, which is like, the product has to be good. People have to like using it, and that's the most important lead source. That's the vast majority where it comes in. They're like, hey, I liked using it, and I told someone about it. Often we forget that a lot of the viral techniques we build into our products are really just trying to amplify the natural desire for someone to say, hey, check this out. If there's no initial, like, hey, check this out, you can put all the buttons and widgets and flows you want. They're not gonna tell someone else about it. So,
Yes. Awesome. All right, let's move to Mike and Mark now. We talked a lot about tactics. Let's talk about tools. So, Mike, what kind of tools have you actually tried in the lead generation sector? Which ones did you not try and why?
Tools. Okay.
These questions were written down.
Yeah, I like to go straight.
You did not.
By the way, we're agreeing here way too much. It's very interesting for the audience. So tools, the stuff we do is really pretty standard. We do Google search. We're dabbling with other forms of media now as well. So I mean, it's kind of, if you do internet marketing, that's where I cut my teeth. That's what I was doing before I did this stuff. Like, we went down that list, and then you start building out as you have the capacity to do stuff. Whether it's buying email lists or frankly ads and other people's stuff. Like, we've spent $1 anywhere we can, and if it's kind of profitable, then we'll spend more of it and go on to the next thing. Been running banner ads for years. That's a great way to build awareness and stuff like that. So are those tools?
What do you guys use for measurement in social media?
Measurement in social media. So to be honest, with social media stuff, we don't do a hell of a lot of measurement. I sort of read the feed, and other people do too, and so long as people are getting back to people in a timely manner, that's good. Social media is kind of word of mouth to me. I'll tell you, I'll give you a little fact. Like, social media is kind of bullshit from lead generation from my point of view. So email is 100 times as effective as Twitter and 10 times as effective as Facebook, according to what we've learned. So there's some fun stats you can take and use. Email is still the engine of all of these businesses, so I guess I spoiled it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We kind of tried a bunch of stuff. We built our own internal tracking stuff. I think it's really important if you're building a SaaS business to be able to go from visit, and then when somebody signs up for your product, store where they came from in your database. I know we'll talk about this, but it's really important to be able to track, acquisition sources, back to lifetime value, and all these kinds of things. So investing in those capabilities, and chances are you have to build something yourself, store these things in your own database, and not count on Google Analytics. But there are some vendors out there doing this stuff.
Cool, sweet. How about you, Mark? Tools?
Yeah. The question was new and innovative tools. I'm not sure who considers Google AdWords innovative. If you consider Google AdWords innovative, you're missing the show. But so to put some perspective on this, I thought I'd pull out some numbers. We average about 2,000 incoming leads a month, And again, I said we're in the plumbing business. We attract late 30s, mid 40s, environmental safety quality managers. These are guys that work at Dofasco and are sitting in a cubicle somewhere. Our average purchase price is $62,000. So we range from $1 million sale to the cheapest you can get it is about 20 grand. So one thing I want to dispel is that online search advertising is only for small cost business. It's very much for us, and so we average about 2,000 leads a month, and I thought I'd look in August and see where those 2,000 leads came from. 87% of those leads came online. I'm not sure what, 1,713 leads of the 2,000 came online. Of that 87%, 77% came from the major search engines. And it breaks down, there's a big elephant in the room, and that elephant is Google. Of the leads that come from search engines, 74% Google, 11% Yahoo, 8% Capterra, and 7% of those come from social networks. And that comprises 3% of our overall leads. I believe we have 1 lead from Twitter, even though we tweet our little hearts out. Interestingly enough, though, of those 77% online leads, a full 61% of those are paid. So we pay, our overall marketing budget a month is about $80,000 a month. We pay about 55, 60 of that towards Google, Yahoo, Bing. So we pay about 60 grand a month in paid search. We average about $50 a month, or $50 a lead. And so on that, sorry, I'm throwing out a lot of numbers here, but just to give you the weight of how much Google AdWords means to our business, I mean, it essentially is, of the 2,000 leads, 1,000 of them come straight from paid Google search.
Mark, the key to that is a good landing page. What do you guys do about control of your website, building those landing pages, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many different, it's a juggling act. It's optimizing landing pages, it's optimizing your keywords, it's negative keywords, it's making sure that when somebody lands on your page, they have quick response times and quick convert fast. And I know we're not talking about this today, but I think as important in the lead discussion is what you do with the lead when you get it. Where does it go? Do you have an automated system for sales, marketing, and tracking after that? So, my bottom line is for us at least, it's incredibly economical to do paid search. On a $62,000 deal, our average advertising cost is about $4,000. So we're, overall revenue, on a 3-year contract, our advertising cost is about 3.5%. So social networks get all the press. We get less than 5% of our leads from social networks. We get the majority of them from paid search. And so innovative ways, do that.
Well, great stuff, guys. I think the theme we're seeing is very similar, a lot of content generation and education. One of the things we're always saying these days is make marketing that you love as marketers. You guys are all buyers in the room. Do you want to be bought in a list, in cold call, and direct mail? Or do you want to be educated when you're searching for something? And I think that's kind of the theme we're seeing here. Let's move on to sales. So we're generating tons of leads now, and we're going to start with Joel here and go to Mark on sales. So how do you guys structure your sales teams in such a way? I think you both built decent-sized sales teams. How do you structure them, and how do you make sure, what kind of tactics do you use to make them as efficient as possible?
First of all, I think there's a lot of folks with early stage companies in the room, and I think it changes as your company matures. So when we started out, we had to hire some pretty senior salespeople who could run on their own, high base salaries, so forth and so on. As we mature as a sales group and really mature, being each person on a SaaS basis books about 60 grand a month, we flip the model so that they can make 4 times their base salary on target. That makes a salesperson very productive. Okay. They run hard because every single sale is big money in their pockets, and I think that's important. The other thing that's really important is you've got to have a great sales coach when you have a team like that. We tend to, when you recruit people on a low base salary, you tend to find, really intelligent younger people coming into the market, and with a great coach, they can be highly productive. With a tremendous incentive plan, they can be highly productive. But we are always trying to teach and learn in the sales group. We win a ton of deals on salesmanship alone. We just won a deal today because the other sales guy, their product was cheaper, but they spooked them because they weren't as professional. professional. So I think that's something that's highly underrated in the technology industry. And one of my issues I always have, I try to avoid hiring software salespeople because they don't know how to demo, they don't know how to sell software. They've been relying on sales engineers their whole life. And they just haven't had the proper sales training because there's an emphasis on technology and not selling. So my advice to anyone who's got a software company here or growing a software company is to don't worry about the technology, just find a great sales coach and build that up. Highly incentivized sales structures once you hit sales maturity. And we do use a very structured CRM system. We use Salesforce. We've customized it to Yahoo.
We get back to customers within minutes of a qualified lead fast. We get deals just because of our response time. So you have to have a very fast, well-oiled sales engine, and I think you'll have a competitive advantage in the technology marketplace.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Joel. I think to build on that, Joel started as a sales guy. I started as a sales guy too. I think the culture of your sales team is so critical. The relationship that they build, and I think starting with the CEO down, how you treat customers, how you respond is critical to the structure of your sales team. I was our first salesperson. I was our only salesperson for about 5 years. And then my second salesperson is now our VP of sales, and my third salesperson is also my VP of sales. And today we have 40 salespeople. I've only brought in one management level guy from the outside, and he was somebody we needed some gray hair to go around, and so we pulled one in. But he does a phenomenal job. But I think if you're small, I believe that every CEO should be a salesperson. They should know the marketing. You should be intimately involved with that if you're growing from a 1 or 2 person company up. And you should continue to be a salesperson and be intimately involved with that culture. I have a principle where no more than 3 salespeople report to a team lead or to a VP and so on. So of our 40 salespeople, everyone has great coaching from people who have been there, done that. I also have a philosophy of no sales engineers. Every one of our salespeople need to be able to demo the product thoroughly, talk the nuts and bolts. It's a little more difficult to ramp them up, but then, otherwise your cost of sales is really high. If you want to be part of the new World Web 2.0 model, you want to have low cost of sales, and having 6 people show up for a demo is not necessary. And then the automation, like Joel uses, we use Salesforce heavily. Every lead goes through a heavy automation process, and literally down to the number of hours it takes a salesperson to call a lead. If they don't call it fast enough, it gets reassigned to somebody else. So there's a step-by-step process, the whole thing. It's a very visible, well-oiled machine. And but back to Joel's point, I think the culture and the personality of the salespeople is really the most important fundamental thing.
Great point, guys. Two trends I like there is one around sales coaching. I think a lot of people think about their manager and the word sales management. I start picturing people pushing spreadsheets around and running forecasts and numbers, and that's not what sales management is. Your sales manager is a great coach that can get in that person's head, teach them how to sell, teach them the product, keep them motivated, etc. I also like Joel's comment about we have this term called show up and throw up, and I think that's what a lot of software salespeople unfortunately do. They think it's about the demo. The sale is not about the demo. So it's really about understanding your customer, building that relationship, and solving their problems. We're going to come back here before we go on this side around branding. The big question I always get from folks when they hear that I run a sales team is, where do you find good salespeople? As if there's like a one line I can tell them, and their answers are going to be solved. So I'd like to hear from you guys. Let's brainstorm a little bit. How do you guys find top salespeople?
Very difficult. We gave up. The problem is when we post an ad on a job site, you just get a tsunami of resumes. So we found a very reliable recruiter. Because we have a low base and a high commission, we get away with a fairly low fee per sales, and they deal with the tsunami, right? And then, because my sales manager is more valuable coaching his team and closing deals, I don't want him being, funneling through HR. They are needles in haystacks, And even when you get a really good recruiter who's not just going to fling resumes at you, but really send you exactly the profile you're looking for, even then, you may hire 1 out of 10, and even then, potentially only 60–70% make it through the first 90 days. It is not easy finding good salespeople, and good salespeople don't necessarily have good experience. A lot of the times you say, oh, look, they've got all this great experience, and yeah, so they work somewhere. Someone else just kept them on for a long time, and they were in a good patch, and they sold a lot of product because the company was growing. Doesn't mean they were a good salesman. I found that. I've discovered that. I find what you really got to look for in salespeople are cognitive attributes, curiosity, and drive. And you can, if you have a good coach, you can teach them. But those are the fundamental attributes that don't come necessarily with experience. They come with they're born. I'm a fundamental believer that salespeople are born, not made.
I believe salespeople are made. I think a great salesperson, they need to be
interesting. Hello.
I think you need 3 things to be a great salesperson. You need to be smart, you need to be likable, you need to be hardworking. If you have those 3 qualities, you can teach them the sales process. You can teach them how to negotiate a contract. You can teach them how to do a demo. How do we find good salespeople? It is so hard. You can sit down, you can do 6 interviews with somebody. We often marvel at the fact that we hire 5 people, peg them out. This guy's going to be a rock star. Not so sure about this one. Not so sure about this one. It's always the one that we're not sure about that's blowing the numbers, and the guy who's the rock star who's not pulling it. If there needs to be a psychological profile. You talk about the skills of being a good salesperson. Well, I think being a good salesperson requires being a good salesperson, and oftentimes it's hard to figure that out up front. But we use referrals. We try to avoid recruiters as best we can. We have a reference program with our employees. I interview everybody who comes through the door. The guys who have worked by me for the last 10 years interview everybody who comes through the door. So we do a lot of monster and job postings. We have a full-time recruiter on site to pull people in. We fish out of Salesforce's pond a lot. Hope nobody from Salesforce is here. And we try to bring them smart, likable, hardworking, and then we try to enroll them in our system. And one last comment on that: salespeople are jockeys; they're not horses. It's a line that I adopted from somebody else. Salespeople with too much experience, 10, 15 years experience, they want to pick the right horse. They're not going to win the race on their own. They're going to pick the horse to win the race. We find we've never had success bringing somebody in with 10 years experience. We find you adopt them, you brainwash them a little bit into your culture and your system, and you build them to be great salespeople. And that's why I feel you make them, because I've never been able to bring in a multiple 6-figure sales guy and have them pull huge numbers first year and retain them. I need to build them up to that to keep them around.
Yeah, I totally hear that, Mark. We've experimented with some high-paid people, and I'll tell you, the rookies are the one that perform for us. The hard-working, hungry rookies perform. I'll add one more channel that has worked well for us. We call it the forced referral. When you're small, it's harder to pull this off. But we actually have one of our recruiters will go to each employee and say, hey, I'm going to meet with you, John, tomorrow at 8:30. The night before, they go through all their LinkedIn connections and find the 10 people that look like they might be a good fit for our role. And they sit down and ask John about those 10 people. Like, that guy sucked, that guy was awesome, oh, you made me think about this person. So we call it the forced referral. Works really well. The other thing is that all the attributes these guys mentioned they basically are a scoring matrix. So really good feedback here. The one other attribute I'll throw in there is coachability. We heard a lot about coaching. This is 80% of my sales rep interview. I just say, sell me my product. We're doing a role play. I'm a prospect. You're the HubSpot salesperson. Let's do it. And we set up the role play. Then I stop. How'd you do? And I'm going to give you some feedback. Here's what you did well. Here's what you didn't do well. Now I'm going to be the HubSpot salesperson. I'm going to sell you. I'm going to show you how to do it. And then I'm going to have you do it again. That little 10, 15-minute interchange, I learned so much about them, how coachable they are, and whether this is going to be a rock star or not. So let's switch back to branding and sales and marketing on this side with Mike and Daniel. We're going to start with you, Daniel. So branding, it's something that hasn't talked about anymore in this new age of marketing. Does this still fit into the world of marketing? And these sales and marketing groups, 2 groups that haven't exactly gotten along historically, now they're coming together. They need to work together more closely. Do you still do branding, and how do these 2 groups work together? What kind of tactics do you put in place to make sales and marketing alignment work? We'll start with Daniel.
Yeah, so I thought it was funny. Dave Premier's our head of inside sales makes interviewees do a presentation, do our thing, get up in front of him. So it's a totally right tactic. So I think Dan thinks we have a good brand, and I that's nice. We don't think about it. We think about trying it's very hard in this day and age to create a brand through forcing it out to people. Like I think that's one thing, especially if you're a startup. You do not have the amount of money to go off and bombard people and create this huge high-level brand. And it'll probably backfire if you try. So I think the first point would be it takes time to build. And I think I always think about this metaphor of this giant boulder you're trying to push. Like it's very hard to get it moving, but once it starts moving, it'll keep picking up steam and get going. So a couple tactics that we did to help get a brand. First was know who your segment and audience is. This is especially difficult when you're trying to do customer discovery and product market fit early on, but have a sense of who are you trying to speak to. Because invariably, every audience of people you're trying to speak to has gurus and experts. And I think they're the first people you want to try and get to. And so what we try to do is figure out who are the thought leaders around next generation workforce, around people management, around coaching, actually. And so for us, it was and then mining your network. So we mined our network to figure out who could get us to some of these important people. In our case, one of the first people who sort of said, yeah, this is right, was a guy named Marshall Goldsmith, who was one of the world's best executive coaches. And so we said, Marshall, what can we do with you? And you have to give to get. If you want people who are at that level to attach their brand to you in any way, shape, or form, they have to get something from you. And rather than being shy about it, we tried to figure out something that he wanted. He wanted some mobile support, and we said, okay, we can do that. And so we set it up, and then he started to talk about what we were doing. It wasn't a quid pro quo. You had to believe in it, so I think that was important. And I think so that's important to your brand. Now the key point I'm trying to get to is once we had Mark, this guy, this famous coach who said he did a webinar, it was just 10 times easier to go to the next person and say, hey, will you do a webinar? Marshall just did one for us. And the third one becomes easier, and then the fourth one. And I remember going to Brian Halligan and saying, hey, Brian, will you do a webinar? Look who else has done one, for free. And they didn't ask us for anything. And I think he looked for 1 second. And at this point, basically any academic or guru, I say, look at the 50 people who've done these things. They've all lent their brand one of you. And they're like, now we want to be. And now it's kind of crazy. People call us when they're launching a book. They want to do a web seminar with us, which kind of blows my mind. So first point was it takes time. You have to mine the network around your brand. Second point would go back to not just remarkable content, but remarkable contract. What is Mike sitting here whispering in my ear all the time? It's there's a controversy. Everyone's agreeing. There's no fighting. Controversy attracts attention. And so, you guys sort of twittered and laughed a little early when I said performance review sucks, mostly because we all know it's true. It's like Homer. You laugh because it's true. But one of the things we did is, I remember we got a chance to be featured at the HR Tech Show, the biggest show of buyers and people buying HR technology. We had a 5-minute spot because we had done a demo. We had won an award. And Dave Stein over there, who's my co-CEO, got to present. And we had this presentation. This is my message about branding. It was very stark. It was 2 words a slide. It wasn't all this fancy spreadsheets and demoware. It was one idea at a time. So message 1, cut through. Be very focused on what that brand is or what that message you're trying to make. And the second is be controversial. So imagine getting up in front of 1,500 people who are in charge of buying performance systems for every major corporation in the world and getting up and having the words performance reviews suck up on the wall. And guess what? They loved it. They thought it was amazing because you were finally speaking the truth to power. They were like, wow, that's great. You broke through. No other vendor's going to get up. And of course, that's your advantage. I think that's the last point is do jujitsu. You're a tiny little startup, right? What have you got to lose? An advisor, a guy actually who's also got a great blog, Steve Blank, had lunch with me once. And he said, you should tell your board he said, you should be only considering PR events where you think you have a reasonable chance of getting arrested. And he's right? You should do stuff that is controversial, that gets attention. And I'll leave with one last story. If you've read Mark Benioff's book, everyone's alluding to Salesforce. This guy was the master of doing these stunts. 2 things he did. Once, the biggest CRM show in the world was happening in Paris, and he rented out every taxi cab from the airport to the city. So you could not go to the show unless you got into a cab that was driven by his Salesforce reps, and they had 40 minutes to tell you about their product. The second thing they did is you can't do it anymore because it's been done, but he hired protesters. to protest outside of the Siebel customer conference. They were the big enemy, and he had an attack strategy, no software, and he had protesters outside, stop making us suffer through this. So those are a couple of tactics, I think, that help with your brand and that have been helpful to us.
Same stuff, how do you build a brand?
Yeah, and sales and marketing alignment if you want.
Okay, so I'll speak to sales and marketing alignment very quickly and just say we haven't encountered that problem yet. We actually don't have we do have a sales team right now. It's 4 people, but I've been at this for 8 years, and we're experimenting with that because we've gotten by on marketing alone until this point. So I can't really credibly speak to managing those 2. And then the other part was, how do you build a brand? I've got pithy stuff for you here in a way. I mean, do what you say. It's really building a brand is really about developing trust. And so you have to do what you say and just consistently, I think of it as we have like a mantra at FreshBooks, which is execute on extraordinary experiences every day. Okay, and this is the way I think of it. It's a little like high level or whatever, but I really believe in this thing I like to call the experience continuum, which is every time you interact with a brand, you want that to be positive. And if you're buying an Apple product, if you're using one of their devices, that's an experience. Okay? They're not there, you're not talking to them, that's an experience. If something breaks and you need it fixed, you want to phone them and you want to get service or support. Right? And if you get somebody who's less than knowledgeable or perhaps rude, all of a sudden that experience continuum you have with your brand starts to break down. And I think one of the advantages a lot of companies have today who are starting out in a web world, and I know we've benefited from this, is we just know people are watching all the time. And go do a search, go look for the worst thing you can find about FreshBooks online. And it's probably somebody wanting some feature we're not going to build. But by and large, the sentiment out there is enormously, enormously positive. And if people are buying on Google search and doing all these other things, like, you really have to think about that experience continuum and never letting that bubble pop. Not letting somebody phone you and have a bad experience. Not letting somebody send you an email and not get a reply. Not letting someone hop on a landing page that has a spelling mistake. Because all those little paper cuts, they pop that brand experience in your experience continuum. So we're all about service at FreshBooks, and as we get into sales, we're all about having the right kind of salespeople who are, they're just gonna, they're never gonna ask to close the deal, right? They're gonna, what's your problem? This is how we solve it. Walk through that door or don't. And I think, in this very connected world, it's a good place to be.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Mike. We'll do one more question, then we'll go to Q&A. I'm really curious on the panel on this one. Let's talk about the future. 2-3 years ago, it was SEO. All the buzz now is social media. What are we going to be talking about a year or two from now with regards to lead generation? What are some of these trends you guys are reading about in TechCrunch, or even some of the underground worlds that we all live in that you really think are going to surface and be the future of lead generation in the next 2 years? All four of you will comment. Let's keep it to like a minute or so. Start with Daniel. You need a minute, Daniel, because Mike's chopping it down.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to go on a limb. This may be totally ridiculous. Yeah. Totally ridiculous. Email.
Just to go back onto the brand thing, is also one last thing. Is like, and Mike sort of said it, but it's like, when we did WorkBrain, everything we did was to convince the world that we were this giant company that was based in the US, because no one wanted to deal with a Canadian company. We were selling the biggest companies in the world. And so you could not find anything about us other than this picture that looked like we were Siebel and we were this tiny company in Toronto. And today on the web, the one thing social does to you, and you sort of alluded to it, you love email, but you're like, go on the web and see what people say about us. I can't read your emails, but I can read what people say about you. I think it's really important to it's an incredibly overused and kind of bogus word, but trying to be real and be authentic. Everybody who works at Rypple is on our website, right? Their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their Twitter. I mean, I get our customers and prospects are want to be friends on LinkedIn with me all the time, and it's a little weird at first, and then you're like, well, because hey, if you had a shop, they would walk in your shop, they would know who you are, and I think that's actually pretty important about where maybe it's part of the marketing trend going forward is have
the current state, their current state is we're interested in your product. And so I think it's a very young science of search engine optimization and Google incoming leads. I think that trend will be growing and getting expertise over the next 5 years. I think the next step is to widen that net. As everybody's putting their personal information on Facebook and Google Plus and willingly giving out their information to everybody, all of us sneaky marketing people have access to that once Facebook opens it up to us. And I think HubSpot might have this functionality, I'm not sure, but there are software products where you can scrape the information off people who visit your website. And you can then trend those people. Hey, this person visited 14 pages, they really drilled down deep on this product line, but they never filled out our web form. Well, that information can be concatenated, for lack of a better term, with their Facebook profile and the cookies that are sitting on their desktop, so that they maybe never willingly gave you their information, but you can combine that information with the database of their personal information out there, and lo and behold, they get a call from you 15 minutes after they click off your website. I think that's the next step, and it still has that segmentation, but it still requires user action coming to your website, and it's not casting as wide a net because you can narrow it down by metrics, but it doesn't require somebody to fill out that nasty form, which people fill out our form, you call them, and sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. Okay, well, you don't want to talk to us? Well, yeah, okay, well, maybe let's talk. And then 2 months later, they buy the software. You have to, for a product like ours, you have to get them on the phone. But to get them on the phone, we can't call everybody. 1 in 10,000 people in the population are actually interested in buying our software. There's no way we could cold call. But so long as we have a hint, we've got a hot trail, we can go on pursuit. And that, right now, those are leads that willingly come to us, but I think in the future, we'll be able to scrape that data off the internet without them knowing.
Yeah, mine is very similar to yours, Mark, and I call it personalization and one-to-one marketing. I really think that's what we're going to be talking about in 2 years. I think a lot of the trends, a lot of us are B2B here, and at the B2C conference, sorry, but it was 1999 when they were talking about SEO, and it takes us a little while to catch on to that stuff. And now if you look at like Netflix and Amazon, what are they really good at? You go to Amazon and you look at as you buy more books and visit their site, their suggestions of what books you want to buy actually get pretty damn good.
How do you
it's
get those?
It's a very personalized one-to-one experience. And I think in B2B today, we're using all this data we collect to basically spam people with market automation. And I think where we need to go is to use all this data to understand our customers better and create a very personalized experience of them with our brand.
So we can send them email.